This was my bank account in 2020. Fast forward 5 years today, I run a successful media company with my husband and our best friend, and the craziest part is that we turned those $38 into $425,000 in our first year alone. And I'm gonna walk you through exactly what we did. This is the anatomy of a dream. All right, so let's start off with 2020. This was supposed to be my time to shine. I had gone to undergrad for film school. I went to grad school. I'm thinking like, I am really gonna make it now as a director. I was on the cusp of getting represented. Like, this was my time. And
coronavirus officially hitting the US.
2020 is now the deadliest year in US history.
2020, like for most people, was not a great year for me. Earlier on in the year, had started off with a lower back injury that prevented me from really doing much. And then my grandmother passes away a week before the pandemic shut down. I really lost my direction. I was living off of unemployment checks. Most of that money was going towards rent and food. And my husband was really the only breadwinner. I didn't really know what I was doing with my life. All I did know was that I had all of these very, very high expectations for where I wanted my life to be, and I wasn't going anywhere near it. The biggest shift for me honestly happened when a Tony Robbins ad came up on my computer. The reason that it called to me is that, wow, like normally these things are thousands of dollars, and because it was virtual, it was in the 200 range, which felt necessary. I honestly feel like it was exactly what I needed. There was this one exercise that Tony Robbins did that changed everything for me. Basically, he has you close your eyes and he guides you through this entire imaginary story of you 20 years from now. And he has you imagine what your life would look like if nothing were to change in terms of your habits and your actions. So you're in this like scene staring at yourself in the mirror, and I was bawling listening to it. And it was in that he then has you open your eyes, and it's basically this hurrah, like, you have another chance. What it really had me understand is that maybe I wasn't responsible for the things that had happened in my life, but I was responsible for how I responded to them because I was in control. There is one more thing that he said that is very important, which was this concept of burning the boats. Basically, in a nutshell, it is if you want plan A, you're gonna have to axe out plan B. So I mentioned earlier that my husband actually had a job and I didn't. He was honestly very happy there. He was so happy that he wanted to climb up and move up into a role of creative director. He had this boss who, let's call, what do we call him? Frank. He had a boss called Frank, okay? And so Frank is an asshole. It's just the truth. Frank was an asshole. When Roy told Frank that he wanted to move up as maybe a creative director, I think there were some issues that started to brew. So much so that at one point Roy came to me and was like, should I have this conversation with Frank? And I was like, no, absolutely. Like, you want to salvage this? Like, we need this job, right? And so Roy has this meeting, and I'm overhearing the conversation because it was a 600 square foot apartment. And this is what I hear. And I'm not, like, literally not even joking when I say this. You're not very talented. You don't have the storytelling tactics and skill set to actually be a creative director. And therefore, did not see Roy moving up. By the end of the conversation, Roy had become this small and was basically submitting to Frank. And after Roy got off the phone, I told him what I would tell any of you who are in a position and in an environment like this one with Frank. And I told him to quit. And I remember that Roy looked at me with his eyes wide open and he was like, why would I do this? This is our only source of income. And then I told him, because if you don't, I'm afraid that one day that you'll believe him. Now here's a lesson I learned from this. It may be costly to quit, but it honestly can be more costly to stay in the wrong environment. If you're in that situation and you don't have the luxury to quit in that moment, find something else as soon as you can. That should be your first step. Because being in an environment like that, honestly, to me, is very dangerous, and I'm gonna say that word, in the long run. And ultimately, this was the catalyst that brought me and my husband to starting our company. This is the part where a very key individual enters the picture, and his name is Aleko Hakim. He is our business partner, our COO, and he is also Roy's best friend from childhood. We call him up and we write Roy's resignation letter. This is when we started to talk about CXC. We had those conversations about what the company would be. We wanted it to be this media agency, but then ultimately like be just like a media company. And it basically led to us deciding that we wanted to work together, but it wasn't 100% finalized. There were going to be a lot of stages that needed to get us there. Our first milestone goal was to save every bit of money that we could so that we could bring Aleko on full time. We didn't pay ourselves for a very long time. We had to take obviously other pieces of work until we could get this business off the ground. So we basically had 2 full-time jobs. We started an LLC. We did all the things that you do to start a business. We're dedicating hours and hours and hours to getting our website together, which at the time was our personal portfolio as artists. We post the website, I believe, on our socials, which was very, very helpful because I will say a good chunk of that $425,000 was from referrals or from friends and network that we had worked with in the past. But that's what led us to our first 2 clients. Before we dive deeper, I have a favor to ask of you. If you can, consider subscribing and turning on that notification bell. That would help our team so much. We have been getting such awesome feedback from you guys, and it even inspired this video. If you have any ideas for future content and future videos that you would like to see, please let us know in the comments. All right, guys, back to the video. We were able to bring Aleko on full time, and that's when we started to really see that there was a lot of movement, and we accelerated and honestly catapulted us forward. And we utilized this platform called Apollo. It allows you to figure out if you want to reach out to someone at Apple or Google, you're able to find people through that. So I'm going to put a little template here as to some of the things that we have done or used. AI is definitely not probably the most helpful thing when it comes to these mass emails. Sure, it can cut corners, it can make it a lot faster, but everyone is doing it. So if you want to stand out, personalize them, take the extra time, you'll probably have a higher chance of getting a response that way. We made $425,000 in our first year, which is honestly insane. Still, throughout this entire time, by the way, Roy has this particular client that was basically keeping Roy afloat on a freelance level as we were building this company. The main reason we were able to get it to $425,000 was because me and Roy were not making anything off of the company yet. And so we were able to invest in the company to actually grow it. This is when we started to understand that while it was saving us money, at a certain point, it was starting to harm the business because having Roy not focus on the company was slowing us down. And it was higher leverage for Roy to be at the company, being the CEO full time, than it was to save money. And this is when we decided to actually fully burn the boats. It meant that we were putting all of our eggs in that basket. And that changed everything because 6 months later after that, we hit $1 million in the business. We were accelerating towards success, and it honestly felt like we were just going to be breaking 10 million the 3rd year. That's what we thought we were projecting. I don't even know why. And we made a rookie mistake, which was we started new businesses. We looked at having more businesses as more opportunities. But honestly, in reality, it's just more distraction. You look at really successful people and you see that they have multiple businesses, so you think that you can do the same thing. But that came at a later time. And they were able to hone in on their first business that did really well, and then later on they were able to apply all of those principles maybe to another one. And here's another thing, they are not running all of those businesses, they have other CEOs. And so we sort of hit this plateau. And what it forced us to do was then look at these companies that we were building and make very tough decisions. And what we ended up deciding to do was to cut 2 of our companies, and we became very specific about the projects and the kinds of projects we wanted to work on and the people that we would work with. We became incredibly obsessed with perfecting our hiring process. And I think that by being more picky and being more specific, it allowed us to be successful in the right areas, which ultimately allowed us to be a lot more successful, period. Because we understood at that point that the people that we had on our team were going to make or break our success. And I think the person that I was back then was all about wanting to maintain control, and I feel like I had my own ideas as to how things should be done. And now I'm so much more interested in learning from the people that we bring on, because at the end of the day, this business, if I were to not be here, needs to be able to run without us. That is the point, is to build something that outlives us. And what's crazy is within another 6 months, everything started to change. And we accelerated and honestly catapulted us forward to finally break that plateau that we had hit. So fast forward, we are here today with a new venture, Anatomy of a Dream. But this is, I think, the venture that I have been working towards. But I think the thing I'm proudest of is that we created a vehicle that allows us to stop at all of the dreams that we've had in mind and to bring on the people that we want to go on that journey with. And so if you're watching this and your dream is to own a business or anything else, I want to leave you with this. If you have $38 in your bank account, and I really hope that that's not the case, it is not just a financial problem. It's an opportunity waiting to happen. And I know that's crazy to say, because rock bottom isn't the end. It's oftentimes the foundation. What you do now becomes the story that you'll one day tell. So instead of asking, why me? Ask, what can this moment make of me? Because sometimes having nothing strips away the noise. And that's when you finally get clear and you can hear the voice that's been whispering your dream all along. This might be the beginning of the anatomy of your dream. All right, guys, I will see you in the next one.